So this is steering with the throttle. We go left. Now I got some speed when I decelerate. Goes hard right. I have 3-wheel drive right now. Oh, God.
Holy hell. It's just exploded inside.
Sounds like Taco Tuesday.
Welcome to Hoovie's Garage, the dumbest automotive channel in all of YouTube, and this is my 2010 Land Rover Range Rover Sport Supercharged autobiography that many consider to be the most unreliable Range Rover ever made. Now, despite that, I bought this thing almost 6 months ago, and it has been completely reliable. Nothing new has broken other than the existing issues that it had when I bought it. And it was only $8,500, so I really can't complain very much. This one, 510 horsepower, a beautiful interior, air ride suspension, heated seats and steering wheel. Been so nice in these winter months, but it's been neglected because there have been other pressing issues at the Wizard shop to get fixed, and I sort of needed this thing, so it's been waiting. I haven't even changed the oil or done a thing to this car in 6 months and 2,000 or 3,000 miles, but that changes today. Now, the other thing we should talk about is, should you buy something like this? Say any of the high-performance SUVs that exploded in the mid to late 2000s, and well, the answer is absolutely not. Despite this one having no new issues, it came with a whole slew of issues: intermittent suspension faults, a nice little Range Rover clunk the front suspension is known for, and if I park it for more than 3 days or so, the battery goes flat, so it has a battery drain. But now we have a car that I can drive while this one's finally getting fixed. My 2007 Mercedes ML63, which was brought to the Car Wizards, I bought it for only $5,000 because it had its own battery drain due to a rear hatch. And I sort of need to decide which one of my 500 plus horsepower SUVs that I'm keeping in a roundabout way. Talk about whether you should own one of these very unreliable but heavily depreciated SUVs that are just totally awesome. So let's hop in this thing and head to the Wizards. Sorry to neglect you for so long. It is just so fast, and $8,500 is just an astonishingly good deal for one of these. It's loving the cold weather with a supercharger, 510 horsepower, and the ML63, another crazy good deal, only $5,000. These cars are easily worth double what I paid for them, but I took a big chance. Muir Nation Bob found this one. It was sitting on the ground. The air suspension had collapsed with a dead battery because of the battery drain issue, and it happened to be, well, good enough. I mean, 2 or 3 days before the battery drains, that's pretty good for like an Italian exotic, but not for a Range Rover you want to drive every day if you go out of town for a weekend. Then that's kind of annoying. The ML63, it would happen in a matter of hours, but that was just due to the faulty hatch. Now, I have the service history on the ML63. We'll talk about everything that happened to it in the last 10 years, and, well, how much I'm paying at the Car Wizards, I'm not quite sure yet because he found some other things. But these heavily depreciated SUVs with this level of performance, on the surface, it seems fantastic. I mean, the fit and finish of this vehicle is just so dang nice. And the horsepower wars, it was so fun to see during this era, starting with, say, the Cayenne Turbo, 450 horsepower. Then the ML63 showed up with a little over 500 horsepower. Then these, 510. Then the Cayenne Turbo S came out, 520 horsepower, I believe. And then the X5M, I think, was 550 horsepower out of twin turbo V8. And they just kept going and going and going. I mean, not that much to where there's a big difference today in horsepower. So you can buy something like this that's 10 to 15 years old for a small fraction of that price and get something that is really, really cool. But, oh man, are you in for a total disaster when it comes to maintenance, potentially. It seems like nearly every one of these high-performance SUVs is gifted with exploding engines. These Range Rovers, for example, have a timing chain that likes to fail, the guides, and that is a $6,000+ issue if you catch it before the motor explodes. If the motor explodes, well, you've totaled the thing out. Same with the X5Ms. They have a motor that likes to go boom, no surprise from a BMW. The ML63 has that head bolt issue, which is very, very expensive to fix, but it seems pretty rare in the older vehicles. It seemed to happen a lot more early on than it did later in its life, but still certainly a maintenance pig. And while the Cayenne Turbo is about the only engine in the top tier high performance mode that isn't, well, made of glass, but if you get the early Cayenne S, which is one I bought for only $300, those motors are complete piles of junk. So it really is a minefield, and you have to do your homework when you're buying these things. But still, would you want to own one if it was your only car, say commuting and taking trips? I really don't think so. The biggest issue I have is nearly all of them have air suspension, including this, which could fail at any moment. And if you're not by a shop that you know, you will get absolutely fleeced. And nowadays, there's no parts in stock, so this thing could go down on a corner, could pop a strut, and you're stuck for 2 weeks wherever you happen to be. So I would never trust this thing to go out of town at its age. And even the Mercedes that I'm picking up that has the R-Knot strut replacement, well, those things fail just as often, even the replacements. I would still never trust any of these to be cross-country road trip vehicles just because of all the complication, all the things that can leave you on the side of the road, little things that are just getting old, and the complication, well, times 100. But around town, maybe. Maybe. I say that before I get the Car Wizard's bill, so let's see what we got. Comes up to Wizard with no faults other than the tire pressure light, which is pretty much standard on these things. So no suspension error. I haven't seen it for a week or so, actually, but looky over here, an ML63. This is actually going to be a tough decision because while this has a really nice interior and way more modern than the ML, I think the ML is just cooler and more special. The wider fenders there, it just has a cool look, and of course I'm a Mercedes guy, so I tend to favor these things, but I'm not sure how much the bill is going to be. I'm just excited to actually enjoy this car. I've never had an ML63 before, and Wizard is eagerly anticipating me.
I told you on that Facebook post I had a bill waiting for you, didn't I?
You did. So it's not even, hello, how are you? Let's go in the back and see the cars. It's just collecting right off the bat today, huh?
Yeah, let's get with the program here.
Okay, well, 2 pages is never good, but $2,707? Oh, well, the second page, there's just one thing on here, shop supplies.
Yeah, but you made it printed out.
And freight?
Yep.
$40? What was $40?
All these parts being shipped in, CV boots and latches and valve cover gaskets, gasket sets.
I see. So yes, valve cover gaskets, we knew that was leaking. The battery drain, which took some time to diagnose, was indeed the rear hatch, which was unexpected. Surprised somebody would dump a car over that. And I guess that was the most expensive thing because you dove in and did some diagnostics there, along with valve cover gaskets. And the intake noise. So the whistle is gone?
It is gone.
Just resealing the intake?
We had to pull the intake off and then split it in half. And
okay.
They used RTV at the factory. Just sealed it back up.
All right, and CV boots and some bulbs. There's a few things that Magic Mike found that I didn't do. Some like cracking on some rubber mounts and bits that are, you know, surface cracks and things, just from age, not like they had failed. But $2,700, huh?
$2,700.
Well, I need to decide which one of these I'm keeping. But first, what do you think of someone just owning and operating heavily depreciated 500 plus horsepower European SUVs like this? Is this a good idea?
It isn't if you don't have the connections you have with a mechanic. It's probably that, or if they could fix it themselves, they could probably do it. It's a gamble. It's a huge gamble. You got really, actually I think you did pretty good on the ML.
I think
but
so.
You could have gotten shafted really bad.
Certainly. Buying it sight unseen, not knowing what the battery drain is, what other issues there. I got extremely lucky, and it was extremely cheap. The Range Rover I've driven for almost 6 months. Even with all the issues it has, the suspension light that comes and goes, the battery drain after 2 or 3 days, and there's clunking in the front end. But I've been driving. I didn't even change the oil, so probably got lucky there. But would you own one?
Yes, I would.
Because you can fix it.
Because I can fix it.
Even though mechanics hate working on their own cars. But you would own one because you have the means to do it. But probably people who are just dependent on the dealer or an expensive independent shop, not a good idea?
Not a good idea. One thing to really keep in mind, if you have little kids at home that you got to feed, medical bills, things coming up, take care of that. Don't take the money you do have in savings and do this.
Splurge on something that looks expensive.
Yeah, take care of your kids.
Well, I can take care of my kids just fine.
I know you can.
But I'm not going to keep both, so I sort of need to decide which one. I haven't really driven the ML63 other than that quick jaunt around the block, so I'll hit the road, I guess. You got the keys?
Payment?
One of these days.
Brr. Bottle of water I left in here is now completely frozen solid. 'Tis cold, but she starts right up. goes into gear. Heated seats on. It is criminally cheap to be in this thing for under $8,000. But I did take a very, very big gamble on this thing, a huge gamble, and it paid off. Come on, buckle, 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 buckle. There. So let's just take this thing in for a moment. No weird noises. It's happy. It's happy. I'll give it a little bit to warm up before I give it the beans, but I'm already missing the instant heated steering wheel on the Range Rover and, well, the nicer interior, but this is really, really cool. You see a lot more Range Rovers on the road, of course, than, say, ML63s, especially in this kind of beige on beige color. I think it's kind of neat in that sense that it's sort of an under-the-radar ML AMG versus the Range Rover that is very ostentatious and very much a status symbol when it comes to soccer moms and such. This is, you know, a lower tier of that. I'm, of course, still a nice luxury car, but not the same. Oh, you go. I'll put it in sport here to where I can dive into the corners, which is another hilarious thing when they built these sport SUVs that can actually handle and accelerate faster than supercars that were built 10 years ago. It's just absolutely ridiculous. This thing is definitely more dialed in when it comes to sportiness from a handling perspective, and just overall this thing feels a lot more lively and sportier, even though it's, well, probably a bigger, heavier vehicle. They just did a better job. Of course, AMG, that's what they've been doing for 40, 50 years basically, from the very beginning when they built the Red Pig out of the S-Class, making it a race car. This is what they were made to do. It is kind of hard to take the Wizard's advice seriously on a car that drives this well for under $8,000 total invested, but this comes at the previous owners, two owners, pain, because I just got the service records mailed over from this thing, and boy, is it a doozy. Let's go home back to the garage, the heated garage, where we'll talk about it. I need to make a decision. Well, $2,700 later, she's about as perfect as a 175,000 mile, 15-year-old SUV can be. Almost. I did skip on, say, sway bar bushings that had service cracks on them. I think the front diff mount. Magic Mike said you might want to do that in the future, but $2,700 was enough for me. There's a few other little things, but not pressing. Thankfully, I don't have to decide right away which car I'm going to keep and sell because, well, the Land Rover is going to be down for a while, so I can just enjoy this thing and slowly make up my mind. But the previous owner, kind enough to send me all the service records right here. Well, they kind of clumped in a pile, but as you can see, they're a lot. And with the bill I just paid over the last 8 years, that's $25,000 to keep this Mercedes running properly for 8 years. So if you divide that by 8 years, that's something over $3,000 a year. So let's say $300 a month to keep this car running without a car payment. So really, you have a car payment no matter what. If you buy a cheap depreciated one like this and pay cash, you're going to pay for it in maintenance. If you buy a new one, you're going to pay it in depreciation and, well, obviously a car payment and interest. So really, there is no winning on these cars. But the good things about them, number one, they're not building things like this anymore. As we try and get more fuel efficient and more environmentally friendly and go to electric cars, basically automakers are trying to figure out how to get 500 plus horsepower out of less displacement, out of, say, a 4-liter V8 instead of a 6.2-liter V8 with Mercedes, or, well, less cylinders altogether. V6, 4 cylinders, so you're looking at the last of a breed right here. There was a very fun period of time, but that 12.3 miles per gallon, as he's showing off in the front license plate, the previous owner, that's no joke. In addition, you get a very safe vehicle. Say these things are 10 years ahead of most normal, common automakers when it comes to safety, so you can feel pretty good driving around in something like this. And you know, they're just cool. It's cool to have a Mercedes, obviously, and to have something special like this for cheap. It is kind of fun to brag about or make YouTube videos about, but as for owning one, well, I probably wouldn't unless you have, say, a backup car, a fun car that you could put into service when this one goes down. If this is your only vehicle and you're dependent on it every day to get to work, probably not a good idea. Although a lot of people do make bad decisions like me and get very, very lucky, but if you've seen on the channel for years and years, it can go very well or it can go very, very poorly.
So this is steering with the throttle. We go left. Now I got some speed when I decelerate. Goes hard right. Because I have 3-wheel drive right now. Jesus has the wheel. Oh, God. Well, I'm back.
You're back so soon?
That was about the sketchiest drive of my life. I was going down the road, I made a turn, and all of a sudden it was the worst noise I've ever heard in my life. And then I was only in 3 paws. It's like 3 wheels were getting power, and this front left one, where you did the axle boot, did not. So I limp it up here, but then it's like a disabled aircraft where you're steering with the throttle, because when you accelerate, it pulls hard to the left,
Right.
and then decelerate hard to the right. And if I hit too hard, then it makes this unbelievable noise. You cannot hit the throttle hard. But now I'm here. Wizard wanted me to move it to put on the lift, and, well...
I can hear it. Let me take a look under there real quick.
We're in reverse, and it's not moving.
Okay, so the inside CV shaft is spinning, but the shaft that comes out of it is not spinning. So the joint itself has failed.
What?
Holy hell! It's just exploded inside.
Have you ever seen that happen before?
I have. The situation here is, you know, the boot was cracked and it had been dry for a long time.
Yeah.
And those are unavailable for the AMG.
I'm just thinking it's not going to suddenly hook up and just start rolling away. So anyway, yeah, we'll put it in park here.
Yes, please.
Ooh.
Oh gosh.
Okay, so when you put the new boot on, something...
When we took it apart, it was all dry inside because it had been cracked. The boot was cracked. The grease was pretty much out of it. The AMG version of these is pretty much unavailable. So what we tried to do is add grease, rebuild the joint, put a new boot on. But apparently it did not hold, did not like it.
Okay, we'll move forward now. I mean,
Just barely.
barely.
Sounds like Taco Tuesday.
It does. So can we find like a used axle since you can't get a new one?
Yes. I'm pretty sure I can locate a used one.
Well, we were talking about whether it was worth it to own these things. This may be your answer. So why, if one wheel is disabled, that it's not spinning any of the other wheels, being all-wheel drive? Shouldn't it still go like it was earlier?
No, a lot like the Land Rover Discoveries, the early Discoveries are the same way. Unless the transfer case is locked, all the power is going through the transfer case to the one that's spinning, and all the others don't get any power diverted to them.
And since this isn't a G-Wagon, it doesn't have lockers. If I had locking diffs, then maybe we'd have some go, but
Yeah, or a locking transfer case.
it doesn't have that.
Nope.
It's a performance SUV. So we may have answered the question a little bit more if these things are worth owning, as I probably listed for sale after it's been fixed, which, well, great sale. This is why I failed as a car dealer. It's like the worst commercial for a car ever. But anyway, thank you for watching.
Welcome to Hoovie's Garage, the dumbest automotive channel in all of YouTube. And this is my 2010 Land Rover Range Rover, Land Rover Range Rover Sport Supercharged Autobiography, and it doesn't have any new issues other than the ones that I purchased it with. Really.